All right, so this is a kind of quick review that does not include the answers to the quiz. I will provide those later. So, the section you read, you may recall, picks up right after what I call the cannibal pantry, where um, he dropped the lighter when they found a bunch of bodies, a bunch of humans in the basement of a house. They had crawled through so they had escaped, crawled through the leaves toward what looked like lower ground. He lay listening, holding the boy. This is them hiding basically across the street. He could hear them talking in the road, the voice of a woman. Then he heard them in the dry leaves. He took the boy's hand and pushed the revolver into it. Take it, he whispered. Take it. The boy was terrified. He put his arm around him and held him, his body so thin. Don't be afraid, he said. If they find you, you're going to have to do it. Do you understand? Shh, no crying. Do you hear me? You know how to do it? You put it in your mouth and point it up. Do it quick and hard. Do you understand? Stop crying. Do you understand? I think so. No. Do you understand? Yes. Say, yes, I do, Papa. Yes, I do, Papa. He looked at him. All he saw was terror. He took the gun from him. No, you don't, he said. So this is the most sort of desperate they've gotten this far. And he realizes that this plan he had, which is granted dark, is not going to work because the boy still has that basic instinct to live, even in the darkest of times. So then he makes this promise that he won't leave him. He tells him what his plan was going to be, which was he was going to run and have the cannibals chase him, um, leaving the boy to escape on his own. But then he decided he couldn't do that either. So they're pressed up against the worst scenario. There seems to still be this instinct to stay together and to stay alive, right up until someone else takes their lives. And this is where, as they're lying there, the man asks himself, these are his thoughts, can you do it when the time comes? When the time comes, there will be no time, which is his problem. In other words, once they're discovered, there'll be no time to kill the boy, and the gun could jam, and he wonders if he could then do something with a rock. Again, darkest thoughts, and really the main point here is that question of what can he, how far will he go to protect his child? Because this is really about protection, and he is wondering if he can do it, and he knows that the boy can't do it. And then there are these things where they just decide to hide, and he promises again that he won't leave him. He whispered, "I won't ever leave you. Do you understand?" He lay in the leaves, holding the trembling child, clutching the revolver, all through the long dusk and into the dark, cold and starless, blessed. So the fact that it's dark is a blessing for them. In the night, he hears the hideous shrieks coming from the house, and he tried to put his hand over the boy's ears, and after a while, the screaming stopped. This is all, of course, very traumatic for the boy. He thinks back. He had seen a child's playhouse. So in the road, they basically had put like this child's house, and they would hide in it and pull on the string and ring the bell that we saw described. So it was all pretty apparent for him when he walked into the house, but it was their desperation and their hunger that made them go in anyway. And then the kid is asking if they'll kill us if they find us, and of course they will. And the father doesn't lie to him about that. And these all have to do with things about whether the boy can trust his father, because the boy doesn't know how to make decisions in these situations. Like any child, he's very dependent on his father, and excuse me, he has to trust what his father says. So his father has to be honest with these things. And as they're laying in the dark, there's one of these passages in the green here that sometimes is confusing. It's pitch dark. They're lying in the brush, and the man had no idea what direction they might have taken, and his fear was that they might circle and return to the house. He tried to remember if he knew anything about that, or if it were only a fable. And what direction do most men veer? Perhaps it changed with hemispheres or handedness. Finally, he put it out of his mind, the notion that there could be anything to correct for. His mind was betraying him. So what he's saying here is he, sort of like we all kind of know, that we hear these little things about survival and about what people do when they're lost in the dark. He thinks there's, well, I don't know if we all hear something about what people do in the dark, but this is one of his survival tips. He remembers hearing that when you're walking in the dark, you tend to veer in a direction, whether if you're right-handed, maybe you curve right. If it's maybe it's different in the northern hemisphere than the southern, sort of like the way water will go down a drain a different way. And so he's worried that if they're trying to escape, he doesn't want to wind up walking right back to the house. And then he decides that there's nothing to correcting for the veering. And then there's this line, phantoms not heard from 1,000 years, rousing slowly from their sleep, correct for that. Another one of those sort of lyrical or poetic things that seems to, how could he have not have heard from them? How could he have ever heard from them 1,000 years ago? Maybe he's talking about instincts, things that the phantoms of our ancestors, right? Anyway, this is the continuation. They survive the night. They come across a barn. I'm just kind of hitting the plot points here. Stopping to watch and listen. There's bales of hay. They find, let's see, a handful of seeds. They sat and chewed them. They're coarse and dusty. He went through the farmhouse, room by room. He finds a box cutter, decides to keep that. Screwdriver. So they're still kind of scavenging and picking things up, but not much in the way of food. Then he has this thought because there was yet a lingering odor of cows in the barn, and he stood there thinking about cows, and he realized they were extinct. Was that true? There could be a cow somewhere being fed and cared for. Could there? Fed what? Saved for what? So he's contemplating, there's no information here. He's trying to guess the scope of this devastation, and this has to do with hope. And he's wondering, is there somewhere still a cow? Maybe there's civilization somewhere. Do they have somewhere to actually go? He eats an apple. They go into the mudroom of a kitchen, and they see mason jars. And again, now he's stopping and he's being careful despite his hunger. What had he seen? A drain pipe, a trellis, the dark serpentine of a dead vine running down it like the track of some enterprise on a graph. Again, more about them just kind of scavenging some bits of food and apples. He was gone longer than he meant to. These are little things where he's just their day to day. And he's asking the boy, what do you want to do? Can we stop? Yes, okay, we can stop. It was a long night. It was as long a night as he could remember out of a great plenty such nights. Just tracking the plot here. By evening, at least they were dry. They studied the pieces of a map, but he'd little notion of where they were. Can we have a fire? The boy said. We don't have a lighter. The boy looked away. I'm sorry, I dropped it. I didn't want to tell you. That's okay. So here's a bit of, again, like I said, one of the things is the boy has to trust his father, but the father does want to protect him from certain things. And even though he wouldn't protect him from the idea that maybe they would be killed, dropping the lighter is something he did want to sort of not admit to. All right. After a while, the boy said, they're going to kill those people, aren't they? Yes. Why do they have to do that? I don't know. Are they going to eat them? I don't know. They're going to eat them, aren't they? Yes. And we couldn't help them because they'd eat us too? Yes. And that's why we couldn't help them? Yes. Okay. Okay, so that's where one of the questions was. They passed through towns that warned people away with messages scrawled on the billboards. The billboards had been whited out with thin coats of paint in order to write on them, and through the paint could be seen a pale palimpsest of advertisements for goods which no longer existed. They sat by the side of the road and ate the last of the apples. This is just a little more of that world building, that there are people that actually put up signs warning you away. Again, we had heard things about we had seen a cult of cannibals wearing colors and made up tattoos. We have seen, he has talked about communes, but we don't really know if there's a place to go. And again, he was wondering if there's things like cows still alive. And here's the father being somewhat positive. We'll find something to eat. We always do. The boy didn't answer. The man watched him. That's not it, is it? It's okay. Tell me. The boy looked away down the road. I want you to tell me it's okay. He shook his head. Look at me, the man said. He turned and looked. He looked like he'd been crying. Just tell me. We wouldn't ever eat anybody, would we? No, of course not. Even if we were starving? We're starving now. You said we weren't. I said we weren't dying. I didn't say we weren't starving. But we wouldn't? No, we wouldn't. No matter what. No, no matter what. Because we're the good guys. Yes. And we're carrying the fire. And we're carrying the fire. Yes. Okay. So two things here. Again, there's that fire concept. They're carrying the fire. Obviously, just said they don't have a lighter. This is that metaphorical thing. But also this concept of them being the good guys. The man has broken the world down into sort of two elements, good and bad. Most of the time these days, we think of things in, we put them in context. We find motivations. Um, but here, the world is just split down the middle. There are good guys and there are bad guys. There's no gray areas. Just a description of the boy's skin, because just a reminder, he's almost translucent. He's got no sun. He's got no food. Later, he walks out into the gray, and he stood for a brief moment. He saw for a brief moment the absolute truth of the world, the cold, relentless circling of the intestate earth, darkness, implacable, the blind dogs of the sun and their running, the crushing black vacuum of the universe, and somewhere two hunted animals trembling like ground foxes in their cover, borrowed time and borrowed world and borrowed eyes with which to sorrow it. So he, occasionally he thinks about the entire situation, the planet just sort of dead and circling in space. No one to rescue it, no one to observe it or care about it, and these two just like foxes hiding, living on borrowed time. And it is because there's nothing growing, so they're basically there's no sort of future that he can see. All right, so enough of the bleakness. There's more warnings of death, and he asks the boy if he can read. Yes, don't pay attention. There's no one here. Are they dead? I think so. I wish that little boy was with us. Let's go, he said. So the boy hasn't given up on the idea of the little boy. Another little note here is he's taught the kid to read. Thinking of this world that we're in, that he just contemplated as so empty and bleak, reading is still something he wants to pass on. That seems like there's practical reasons for that. You want to read if a can is poison or if it's peaches. But the other element of reading is how we pass on knowledge and civilization, right? We are able to record what we've learned and pass it on to other generations. We're able to pass on stories to characterize things. All right. Here's the bit on dreams. And then he, let's see, he's just contemplating more of the darkness. So they're at a real low here because they're starving so much and they haven't found anything. And he's sort of in a bleak, dark place. When he looked up, the boy was standing a few feet from him. He was very scared. Don't open it, Papa. So they found another hatch, and the boy is terrified. Here's another question from the quiz. The man knows how to use flint and pliers. So flint's a particular stone that you can strike against metal and get a spark. And this is where they find, again, we have another reference to the good guys. This is what the good guys do. They keep trying. They don't give up. Or he's trying to convince the boy that this bunker, this hatch, which turns out to be a bunker, is not the same as the other one. And he's very excited. So this bunker is actually something that exists in the world. It is probably either from survivalists or it could be as old as the 1950s when people started to build bomb shelters in their basements during the Cold War. And just within this, as they're enjoying food and they're finally getting rest and they feel safe after all this, after this almost hitting bottom, the man thought he had probably not fully committed himself to any of this. You could wake in the dark, wet woods at any time. These will be the best pears you ever tasted, he said. The best. Just you wait. So he's saying things to the boys that's optimistic, but even in his mind, he can't believe the luck that they have. So he hasn't committed to it. And that's one of the things that I asked you, what are the potential dangers of getting comfortable? And they have a bathroom, they have coffee. Go ahead, he said, don't let it get cold. What do I eat first? The boy has never had a dinner. And let's see, do you think we should thank the people? The people who gave us all this? Well, yes, I guess we could do that. Will you do it? Why don't you? I don't know how. Yes, you do. You know how to say thank you. The boy sat staring at his plate. He seemed lost. The man was about to speak when he said, "Dear people, thank you for all this food and stuff. We know that you've saved it for yourself, and if you were here, we wouldn't eat it no matter how hungry we were, and we were sorry that you didn't get to eat it, and we hope you're safe in heaven with God." He looked up. "Is that okay?" He said, "Yes, I think it's okay." So we see that the man has taught the boy about heaven and God, and the boy, maybe he doesn't know how to pray, but he does know how to say thank you, and that's still part of his instinct. All right, so this is basically where you left off, and you're going to continue reading this section on the bunker to the page